All right, 15 seconds. 15 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Excellent. Blast off. Yes. This really is, I kid you not, my favorite part of the service. I love that we intentionally make time to just have conversation while we're all here instead of then trying to figure out how to schedule some time to be with each other in order to have conversations. So that's why I love our meet and greet time um, today. I would like to sit this morning. Can y'all see me in the back if I sit? Okay, cool. Great. Um, Now, if you've heard me speak before, chances are I'm probably going to get up at some point. But I'm going to sit for today. We are continuing our series. Oh, sorry. By the way, my name is Nikki Lerner. If we haven't met yet, I get to be one of the pastors here at Cedar Ridge. Really grateful for that. We are continuing in a series on some parables that Jesus has shared. And Matthew did a fantastic job. Thank you so much for your teachings the last several weeks. Always get so much out of your messages. So thank you for all of that. Hope you have too. I hope your discussion questions and your small groups and all the things you've been doing over the week have been helpful for you in that. And I hope you've been able to go the next layer deeper. Today, I'm going to share some observations and some ideas with you around Jesus's parable about the wheat and the weeds. All right. And it's okay if you're like, I've never heard that one before. That's okay because we're going to go through it. But this parable is about the wheat and the weeds. It's found in Matthew chapter 13, verses 24 to 30. I'll be reading from the New Living Translation today, but you can find that if you would like. So I want to let you know a couple of things. I want to approach this parable uh, this morning from sort of a different angle. I've attended church services long enough to sort of go, and whenever they say the wheat and the weeds, I'm like, great, this is going to be a conversation about weeds, plural. Weeds. There's going to be a conversation about weeds. And what is the weed? Identifying the weeds, obsession about the weeds. And today, I don't want us to over focus on the weeds. I want us to spend some time focusing on what the wheat does, because the wheat is actually a really, really important part of this parable too, not just the weeds. So I want to focus on that part of the story today. Let me tell you right up front, for our time today, that I am not going to tell you what this parable is about. You know why? I want you to figure it out, Michelle. Yes. Well, and you're in luck because later, like after this passage that we're gonna read and be in together, Jesus is already gonna tell you what it means. So I don't have to tell you. And he can do it better than I can. So, I mean, he literally says, and this is what it means. I hope Jesus didn't talk like that, by the way. Can you imagine just walking around like, and this is now what the parable reads? No, he probably had a British accent. I mean, that's what they do in the movies, right? You're welcome. But I'm not going to tell you what it means because you can go home later today and go read that part. And here's what I would say, because some of you are overachievers in the room. Don't open up the scriptures and go ask, look at what it means. Like, just go on the journey with me. I know some of you are already there. You're like, I'm sorry, you should have told me that at the front. Okay. But I'm not going to tell you that because Jesus already explains it. The second reason I'm not going to tell you what it means is because I want us to practice a posture, if you will, of what it might have been like to be with Jesus in this moment and be a part of the crowd. And the part of the crowd was sitting, being present with Jesus, listening to what he said. And what you'll find as we get into the scripture is something really interesting. And this is actually the first observation that I had about this, which was that Jesus tells this parable to the crowds. And then he tells the parable, and then he moves on to two other parables. He doesn't tell the parable and then tell you what the parable means. He moves on. And it's actually not until later, we don't know how later, but later he's hanging out with the 12, with the disciples, okay, not the crowds anymore. And the disciples say, hey, can you tell us what that means? And Jesus then probably takes a big, deep breath and says, okay, here is literally what it means, right? So what I want us to do this morning is to sit in the posture of what the crowd would have been like to hear this scripture and then just have Jesus move on. Okay? So one of the things that is tricky about a parable like this, and you'll find this, remember, later when you go figure out what Jesus meant, is that this parable is about the end of the world. I know. And so my question today is, how do we take a parable that Jesus' intention was it was about the end of the world and actually make it present and that there's something for us today on June 14th, 2026? Because Jesus was not bound by time, right? When Jesus spoke, he was talking about the now and the not yet all at the same time. And so I want us to stay present as much as we can in this parable to hear what Jesus has to say. Now, this parable that's found in Matthew chapter 13 comes right after the parable that Matthew shared about scattering of the seed. And there's a part in that parable, in that scripture, that I want to return to give you some context. Greg, you don't have this, and that's okay. But here's what it says in Matthew 13, verse 16. He says, "Blessed are your eyes because they see. Blessed are your ears because they hear." Now, in that scattering seed parable that Matthew talked about last week, he also said things like, essentially, people can't hear and they can't see it and they don't understand it. But don't forget that he also looked to the crowd and said, yeah, but you hear and you see. And so as we approach the scripture today, remember that you hear and you see. So just know that clarity will come. Now, I want you to picture yourself in this moment, sitting, listening to Jesus while he's storytelling. The scripture says that at this point where we find this scripture, that Jesus is sitting out in a boat and he's telling these parables, he's telling these stories. So I want you to get yourself into a space of where, just dream with me for a minute. Let's play. Where might you have been? Were you on the beach? Were you sitting? Are you standing? Do you have a kid tugging at your clothes? Probably, for some of you, right? Are you with someone? Are you by yourself? Where are you? And what even might be blocking what you hear from Jesus? Maybe you saw him do something 3 days ago and you were like, I don't know about that. Maybe you saw him do something last week and you're like, oh, well, that's very interesting. Think about where you might be. Really take the time to think about it. Now, if you can picture yourself there, let's look to the scripture. Greg, here's the scripture. Here's another story Jesus told. The kingdom of heaven is like a farmer who planted good seed in his field. But that night, as the workers slept, his enemy came and planted weeds among the wheat and then slipped away. When the crop began to grow and produce grain, the weeds also grew. The farmer's workers went to him and said, "Sir, the field where you planted that good seed is full of weeds. Where did they come from?" "An enemy has done this," the farmer exclaimed. "Well, should we pull the weeds?" they asked. "No," he replied. "You'll uproot the wheat if you do. Let both grow together until the harvest. Then I will tell the harvesters to sort out the weeds, tie them into bundles, and burn them, and to put the wheat in the barn." That's our scripture. I think I'm calling this message Wheat Forward. Let's focus on the wheat. Now, here's the one thing I will tell you about Jesus's explanation of this parable, because this is important. Bless you. Because this is important. The wheat is the people of God. The wheat is God's people, people of the kingdom. Us. That's really important to know. All right. The seed, the wheat, all those things. That's us. That's what we need to know for now. So I want to talk about some observations and also some considerations in the scripture. Okay. And that's the first one. One, that the wheat is us, and that the wheat, the seed, is planted. In this scripture, and Greg, you can put that scripture back up for me, friend. Thank you. In this scripture, the farmer intentionally planted the seed. This is what I love about this, right? Oh, you can go one more back, Greg. And another. There we go. Thank you. The kingdom of heaven is like a farmer who planted good seed in his field. I love that the wheat was intentional, that the seed was intentional. It was not random. And there are some of you in the room that need to know and hear this morning that you are not random. I don't care how you got here. For some of us, we had two parents that loved each other and we were conceived and everything was great. For some of us, we had two parents that couldn't conceive for any number of reasons and we were adopted. For some of us, we ended up in our families because we had our parents had some issues and we had a family member that had to help us. For some of you, you were born because of an act of violence against your mom. It doesn't matter how you got here. You were intentional. You weren't random. The farmer plants good seed. So not only are you not random, but you were there because the farmer wanted you to be there. Doesn't that just feel good to know that you were wanted? Yeah. Some of you are in spaces right now where you're not even sure about the people around you if they actually want you. But you're wanted. You're intentional. The farmer planted good seed, not because he felt obligated to, but because it was his choice and he wanted to. Oh, if you hear anything today, I hope you walk away with that. Good news. That's good news that you were intentional and wanted. The second observation that I have is that the wheat is called good. The wheat is called good. Does that sound familiar to anybody? The farmer calling something good. Say again, Michelle. Yes, and let it be good. The creation story. Do you remember that? God created everything and said, mm-hmm. That's how God sounds. Uh, he sounds like a midlife black woman. Right. I know some of you are like, yes, finally somebody said that. But yeah, like, God created it and then said, yeah, oh, that's good. And here it is again, that the seed that was planted was good. And I want to give you permission this morning that it's really okay in moments, hopefully many moments, that you believe that you are good. You're not all good, and neither am I, but you're good. And you're good because that's how it was intended. So, in your thoughtfulness, going back to this morning, don't forget that, sure, you've got some places that probably need some growth, same like me, and you are good. So, the wheat is called good. I want you to be able to receive that today. The other thing is that the wheat, I'm sorry, that not only are you good, but that you are changed. What I love about the story is, this, like everything, it starts with a seed and then it grows into something else. It grows into what it's going to be. And I don't know about you, but ever since beginning my walk with Jesus, I am different. Are you different? I hope so, because that's like the whole foundation of why we believe what we, we believe. But I hope you can see, and I hope that you can actually celebrate that you are different. You're different than you were 6 months ago. You're different than you were 2 years ago. You're different. And at times, I think we can experience things that try to drag us back into the old person. It's like residue. It's like spiritual residue, right? Like we do some work, we do some internal work, we make some change, we see God working in our lives, and then sometimes, depending on the situation we're in, we feel dragged back into that old self. Anybody else feel that sometimes? I know I do. I do, and I'm like, nope, 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 nope. No, we're not going back there, right? But we are changed, and it is good. The next observation I want to make about the scripture is that this is my favorite one, that the wheat grows even while the weeds grow. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't like that that's true. There's a lot of things in scripture I'm like, I don't like that, but there it is. Growth is the purpose of the wheat. Growth is the purpose. Greg, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. I love this. When the farmer's workers went to him and said, "Sir, the field where you planted, it's full of weeds and enemies in this. Should we pull out the weeds?" Now, that sounds like a viable question, doesn't it? I mean, that's what I would want to do. Like, can we just cut it out? Right? Seems like a very simple answer to a big problem. He says no, but the thing is that the wheat grows because that is what the wheat does. That is what the purpose of the wheat is, to grow. The wheat grows, and it was designed to do that. And the thing that is crazy to me is that once the wheat begins to grow, then the weeds grow too. Because in this scripture, if you notice, and this is what I notice, is that they didn't realize that there were weeds there until the wheat began to grow. So like they didn't know. So the farmer scatters the seeds, right? And then the enemy comes in and scatters weeds. But it's not until the wheat started to grow that they saw the weeds start to pop up too. It would seem really obvious to just remove the thing that is hindering you. But the farmer had a different plan. Anybody ever felt like that, that as soon as you start to see some growth in your life, it seems like things come at you and test you? Ever feel like that? It's sort of like, hey, I did the test, I did the work, I did all these things, and yet why are you testing me now? Right? Couldn't we just have like a little season of ease? I don't know about you. I could use a season of ease, right? Can I just kind of, sit and enjoy this growth for a little bit, right? And a lot of times it's like, nope, here comes a weed. Here comes a weed. Here's the next observation I want to make, and that is that the wheat continues to grow. The weeds do not hinder the purpose of the wheat. The wheat still grows. It's not like just because there are some weeds hanging around that now you can't see any growth from the wheat. The wheat still grows because that's what the wheat does. Is it grows. The purpose of the wheat is not destroyed by the weeds. And my question around this is it possible that the wheat that it actually grows stronger because it had to contend with the weeds during its life cycle? I don't know. You're like, absolutely not. But it's curious, right? It's really curious to me. I'm not saying that the wheat wouldn't grow, right? Because again, remember, that's the purpose of the wheat is to grow. But does the wheat get stronger because it had to fight a little bit on the way up? I'm telling you, I don't like this. I don't like that this is true. This sounds terrible. This doesn't sound like hope, right? This sounds like no. Why doesn't the farmer just comment? Like, why would the farmer do that to the wheat? Why? Why don't you just pull it up? These are the questions that I have. It's often said that we learn more by things that we fail at than by the ways that we succeed. I refuse to receive that. Even though I have evidence that says some of the things I have done the worst in my life, I have learned so much from it. Now, I can also learn from the successes. Let me be clear. I I would prefer to learn from the successes, right? But the truth is, and maybe you have experienced this as well, is that the trials, the hard things that you have walked through have taught you so much about who you are and so much about life, just like your successes have, right? But the hard things have taught you so much. For most of us, it's usually only after the hard thing has been over for like 5 years that we can actually talk about it. Anybody there? It's like when you're in it, you can't talk about it. It's just too much. I think about even my history as a leader. I started leading in a faith community when I was in my 20s. I'm not 20 anymore. I was in my 20s. And now I can talk about and tell other leaders that I mentor and work with, like, okay, let me tell you about a way that I utterly failed in this thing. Let me tell you about this thing I would never, ever do again, but let me tell you what I learned, right? And you all probably have stories like that as well as you tell other people. But we learn from those things. We learn from those weeds. that have been in our life. And it's also very possible that the person that we are today, we would not be the same person had it not been for some of those weeds that were circling our life, right? Some of you would not be married to the same person you're married to. Some of you would not be divorced from the same person you're married to, or we're married to, right? Some of you have a mental toughness now that you may not have had given what you had to walk through, whatever that was. But I think about the farmer when he's saying, don't pull up the weeds. If you pull up the weeds, you might pull up the growth. And man, I don't like that that's true, but I think he's right. I think a lot of times that, and I talked about we have growth, right? So we have growth, we get a little ease, we get a little comfortable about what's going on, and then a test comes. And I actually think that when the test comes, that the big question is, are you who you say you are? Jesus got that question all the time, right? Who are you? Are you who you say you are? All the things. He got that question all the time. And for us, we get that question when these weeds show up in our life to test us to say, oh, that growth you think you got more kind? Great. Here, try this. You feel like you got more patient? Awesome. Here you go. And every single time something like that comes into our life, I think it's an opportunity for us to see the evidence that we are changed. It's not just because for some of us, we can think, and I can think this sometimes, y'all, is like, oh, the test is coming and here we go. You ever said that before? Here we go. We're back at it again. We're back to the old person. I think those tests come, some of them allowed by God, to show us that it took, to show us that the change is here, that the change actually worked, that we are the person and we are the people that we are trying to become, that are connected to the character of Jesus. The next observation I want to make is that the wheat, once matured, is identifiable and distinctive from the weeds. They are not the same. So as Jesus is talking about this end of the world, really, right? I think there is actually an encouragement of this. Greg, can you put that picture up that we found this morning? So we found this picture. If you look at that picture, that looks like a lot of sameness, doesn't it? But what I want you to know is that there is a difference between wheat and wheat. There is a distinction. So when Jesus at the end is talking about these things will be separated, I think what he's trying to tell us also is that we need to know that when we're connected to God, when we are growing and we are what Jesus calls us people of the kingdom, that there is a distinction. They look different. The wheat and the weeds, there will not be a problem trying to figure out which one is which. And I say that to encourage you that you will be known as someone who is connected to God. And that's everywhere you go, by the way, that there is a distinction between the two. We may not know what to do with this part of this parable that talks about the end of the world and things being burned up and some things being burned and some things being in a barn. We may not know what's going to go on exactly there. And quite frankly, a lot of that is we have no control over that part, right? That's God's business. And yet we need to know that we are not our weeds. The weeds may surround you. The weeds may be rooted alongside of you, but we are not the weeds. There is a distinction between the two. Here's the next observation I make, and that is is that the wheat was strong enough to withstand weeds until the harvest. I love that the farmer knew. When the servant said, "Hey, should we pull up these weeds?" The farmer knew, no, the wheat will be fine. Again, I don't like that that's true, but the farmer knew that the wheat is strong. You get that too out of this? That the wheat is strong. The wheat can actually withstand it growing alongside of weeds. It can withstand that. The farmer had confidence in the wheat. He knew that what it was capable of, so he allowed the roots or the weeds to grow. The farmer knew that the wheat was strong and on purpose, and the farmer actually had faith in the wheat that it could actually grow and thrive even amongst the weeds, just like us. We may want to uproot and cut out all of the weeds in our life, but the reality is, and hopefully this will be encouraging, is that when God looks at us, he sees strength. He doesn't only see weakness. He sees strength. He sees that we can be in a world or in our lives with all of these different kinds of weeds that at times feel like they are wrapping themselves around us and choking us at times and suffocating us. And yet God still sees that the wheat is on purpose and the wheat is strong. The wheat can withstand. And that is why it is important for us to know that we are not our weeds. There is a distinction between the two. Now, a quick word about weeds. Your weeds are your weeds. Our weeds don't look the same. What might be a weed for you blowing up into your life may not be a weed for me. You own your own weeds. And it's very important to know that. You can identify them so that when you do see them, you're aware of them. Some of you know when I say the word weeds or think about this idea of weeds, you know exactly what they are. Most of us in this room, I think, have lived long enough on this earth to know what they are. And as people of faith, we need to be really alert and aware of what those things are so that we don't drift into patterns and habits and things that lead us to places that we don't want to be. Now, I can't tell you where that is for you, only you know that. But your weeds are your weeds, and you have to identify those things for yourself. But it's good to know, what do you notice when you begin to grow? What weeds start to pop up for you when you start to see growth in your life? Can you identify them? The second thing is that weeds can look like a lot of different things in different times. They can be thought patterns, they can be relationship choices, they can be health and financial problems, they can be all kinds of things. But it's really healthy for us to be able to identify it. In due time, the weeds are pulled. The weeds don't stay around forever. I'm going to say that again. In due time, the weeds are pulled. They don't stay around forever. And the scripture says that. The scripture says that at some point, it's time to harvest the weeds. And they are pulled up. And things are separated, and the wheat goes in the barn, and then the weeds go into the fire. So at some point, relief does come. And the wheat remains. So remember, we grow among the weeds, and we are not abandoned by the farmer. He sees, and he knows, and he is there. So I want to encourage you to just sit with this and think about it. And as many different people that are in this room, we will have that many different takeaways. And so just like the crowd in that moment, Jesus just presented, here it is, and left them with it. to consider what does it mean for them. And that's what I will do with you today, is to leave it with you to consider what does it mean for you today. We're going to spend some time and go into communion. And communion is the time that we get to remember who God is and what he has done for us. And so maybe you could take the time during communion today as you share it, maybe by yourself or with others at tables, that you could think about how strong the wheat is. Maybe you're stronger than you think, even as you live amongst the weeds. So we're going to take communion together. Our communion song today is on video. So when you're ready, you can take communion and then we'll continue to sing together. Great.